It's time for the Hockey Writers Grindline, a weekly show covering everything Detroit Red Wings. Brought to you by our own iconic top line of Wings writers. Sit back and enjoy the grind.
Welcome to the Hockey Writers Grindline. I am your host, Pat Brown, and joining me as always, my line mates, Devin Little and newlywed Kyle Knopp. And boy, are we thrilled to welcome you to a very special episode. Today, we are joined by the voice of Hockeytown, a person who has brought joy to all of Red Wings land. So many of us, he is synonymous with the team, the sport, and Wings fans have celebrated with him in 97, 98, 2002, and 2008. Ken Kal, we are so thrilled to have you join us. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's always a pleasure being on here. And Kyle, how come you're not on your honeymoon? What are you doing here on Friday? Talking with us here.
We just got back last week. We did a week down in Punta Cana, so I missed all that snow you guys got. I had 80 degree weather while you were all getting pounded with snow. So I'm happy to be back, though.
Well, congratulations to you, and I hope you had a good time.
Oh, had a blast. Thank you, Ken.
That's great. Just a quick reminder for you guys at home, our show this week being brought to you by the Hockey Writers coverage in the race for hockey gold at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. We've got 3 solid weeks of wall-to-wall coverage for both the men's and the women's Olympic tournaments, rosters and players analysis, game previews, recaps, commentary, and more. If you're watching the Olympic hockey, you need to be following the Hockey Writers because we'll be watching the games at 2 a.m. So you don't have to be. So good stuff. All right. Bills are paid, or our first bills are paid. And we're going to dive right in, Ken, because we cannot wait to hear what you have to say. So going to start out kind of some new news this week. Pat Verbeek out to Anaheim, named the GM. Shawn Horcoff is elevated to assistant GM and Griffin's GM. And just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit on what the Wings may be losing, what Verbeek is bringing to Anaheim, and anything you may know about Shawn Horcoff coming into his position.
Well, first and foremost, I've known Pat Verbeek for a long, long time, and he did some broadcasting work. In fact, I did a game with him one time when Paul Woods' daughter was in college and he couldn't make it. So what I can tell you about Pat Verbeek is he's a hardworking guy. No matter what he does, he's putting his whole heart and soul into it. And just to give you an example, during the lockout, when there wasn't any hockey, we were on a team together trying to build new ideas for the organization. And he was working hard, the hardest out of anybody on a new project. So, I can understand why he got the job with Anaheim. And I think he's going to do a really good job as a general manager. What I liked about Pat is I never saw him around, and that's a good thing because when you're a scout and you're in management, you want to be looking at players. You don't want to be hanging around the arena. They always say a good salesman is a guy that you never see. Well, that's how I look at Pat Verbeek. And before I talk about Shawn Horcoff, just one last thing. Pat Verbeek deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. He scored over 500 goals. So congratulations on him going to Anaheim, but one day I'd really like to see him in the Hall of Fame. As for Shawn Horcoff, he's been in the organization for a while. I know Steve Yzerman thinks highly of him. The Grand Rapids Griffins obviously are important to the Red Wings, especially now because we're going to see a lot of young talent that's going to filter into Grand Rapids over the next 2 or 3 years. And it's going to be important that those players get ample opportunity to play all kinds of minutes in every situation. So before they become Red Wings, their next stop is going to be in Grand Rapids. And I'm sure Shawn's going to do a great job running that team.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, speaking of, we'll get to kind of current events and talk about the season here. Heading into the All-Star break, Dylan Larkin with one heck of a resurgence this year. Before the season, a lot of folks, I don't want to say writing him off, but some questioning his ability to even maybe be a second line center. And now you've got him putting up 44 points, 42 games. Curious, has his resurgence surprised you? What have you seen out of the Red Wings captain this year?
Well, it doesn't surprise me because I know how hard Dylan Larkin works, and he had a disappointing year last year, and he's the kind of guy that's going to do everything he can in the off season to get ready and really put in a good year. And this is what we're seeing right now. One of the things that I've noticed about Dylan, and I think why he's so successful this year, is in the past, he seemed to turn the puck over a lot in the offensive zone, and he threw it to blind areas on the ice. And then what happens is when you turn the puck over in this league, chances are the other team's going to either score a goal or get a good scoring chance. What he's doing right now this year is not only finishing plays and setting up his teammates, making his teammates around him better, but he's hanging onto the puck in the offensive zone. And sometimes when you're a forward, you got to pay the price. And what I mean by that is you got to hang on to the puck. If nobody's open, sometimes you got to absorb a hit. And a lot of guys aren't like that. They get that puck and it's a hot potato and they want to get rid of it. And the good players, no matter who you look at, hang on to the puck, make sure that when they pass it, a man is open. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen from Dylan Larkin. His skating ability is second to none. I always believed that he could be a strong two-way player, good on the offensive side and also good on the defensive side too. And I'm seeing him really come around. And I really like the way his whole game is. And he and Bertuzzi, to me, are the leaders up front for Detroit. And, of course, we'll talk a little bit about Mo Seider in the back end a little bit later. But, yeah, Dylan Larkin's been terrific. And if it wasn't for his play, I'm not so sure the Red Wings would have the offense they're having right now.
Yeah,
good stuff. Devin?
For sure. So talking about Larkin's struggles last season, let's pivot to a player who's having struggles this season. Filip Zadina's been a hot topic in Hockey Town. He's not having the kind of season that we all kind of hoped he would have this year. So in your opinion, Kal, how do you see his future with the team? What does he maybe need to do to break out of the slump he's in? And then is there a player that comes to mind that has been as critiqued as Zadina has been in the past month or two?
Well, that's a lot right there. But first and foremost, I think it's been a disappointing season for Filip Zadina. And I think lately, though, he's starting to come around. We've seen him pick up an assist on one of those Larkin goals. He's playing a little bit better. But I think it's an identity thing that Filip Zadina has to look at himself and say, how can I contribute to this team? Going in, we always looked at him as a goal scorer, right? I mean, that was his MO as far as him playing junior hockey. And our thought is that when Filip Zadina comes in here, he's going to have to be one of the guys you count on to score goals. Well, he's having a tough time right now, putting the puck on a regular basis into the net. But I think he's better defensively, and I think you have to carve out a niche. And there's been a lot of players who've been expected to score in the National Hockey League and become scorers and don't become that type of player. So what you have to do is you have to figure out how you're going to have to stay with this team. If you're not scoring on a regular basis, then obviously you become a good penalty killer, you become a good solid checker, a good defensive player. So I think those are the things that the coaching staff is working with Filip Zadina right now, trying to make him all around better, especially on the defensive side. He's not a bad defensive player, but again, to work on his offensive game is something that I think he needs to improve upon. I know the coaching staff's been working on him, and he does have a really good shot. He just has to figure out a way to, find a way to get better opportunities and put the puck into the net.
So we are quite a few seasons into the Yzerman as GM tenure, and he has multiple times stated that we need to stress the patience and stress, the wait and wait and wait. But as we've seen this season, we tend to look at this team as being a little bit ahead of that rebuild. How do you assess the current state of this rebuild and where the Red Wings are right now?
Well, I guess all you have to look at is the point totals. And the Red Wings last year picked fourth in the draft. Yeah. Right now, I think they picked 13th. So obviously they've made some jumps. And there's other teams that have fallen backwards, namely the Montreal Canadiens. They went to the Stanley Cup final last year, and they're one of the worst teams in the league right now. But with that saying, Montreal has some issues, goaltending because of injuries and everything like that. But I think what we're seeing with the Red Wings now is that each and every year from last year going forward, this team has to get better and better and better. And I think so far we've seen that. And it really is amazing. Like if you took Raymond and Seider out of this lineup, if they weren't as good as they were, where would this Red Wing team be right now? And that's not to say that Larkin and Bertuzzi have played well. I think the Mesnikov's been a solid player too. But you look at those four players, And they're the reasons why the Red Wings have the point totals that they have this year and still kind of hanging into that final playoff spot. Nobody expected them to make the playoffs this year, but I think it's good experience to try and stay close and try to keep, a good distance from the Boston Bruins and try to move up the ladder on them and not fall apart. And I think that's what we're seeing from this Red Wing team right now.
So, Ken, you've seen Steve Yzerman, the player. You've seen Steve Yzerman, the GM. And we are all curious, how different is Steve Yzerman, the GM, than Steve Yzerman, the player?
Not much difference at all. He wants to win. I mean, that's the thing, I guess when you're a player, you get a little more fired up, and Steve used to get a lot fired up, when things weren't going well and he wanted to win. But, as a general manager, he kind of keeps to his own, and his own staff so I don't really see him that much as I did when he was a player, but I can tell you that he's a competitor, and we all know that, right? I mean, he won his first Stanley Cup championship. He was 13 or 14 years in. That's a long time to wait to win a Stanley Cup. So we saw what he could do with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I think you're seeing the good things that are happening now. And it all starts with drafting players like Raymond and Seider. And, Edvinsson looks like he's going to be a really solid player. We got Niederbach. We've got all these other guys that are coming in the pipeline that one day will become, I think, really good Red Wings. But, I think the key right now is you just got to keep moving up. And I think Steve understands that too. He doesn't put a time frame on where the success of this team is going to be. But I can remember when I was at the University of Michigan, I was there the first year Red Berenson was there. And that program under Red didn't change overnight.
Sure.
And I kind of see that here in Detroit. Each year it just kept getting better and better and better. And I would say that Red Berenson wanted a championship team a lot quicker, but it just doesn't work that way. You have to pay the price. You have to go through the years and the seasons and players getting older and better and bigger and stronger, and then put the team together. So I think the Red Wings are heading in the right direction, and I think the fans can see it as well. And they're a fun team to watch, no question about it.
For sure. So you mentioned, the impact that Seider and Raymond have brought to the team. Alex Nedeljkovic has certainly made a difference as well. So of these players, not named Larkin, Raymond, Seider, Nedeljkovic, Bertuzzi, who has really stood out to you as being a big player for the Red Wings?
I think Nemesnikov's been really good. I think he fits in well on that top line. And when Bertuzzi dropped down to the second line, he really helped that second line to go. And then you got, Nemesnikov on that top line. And what he adds is a physical presence. So you have guys like, Larkin and Raymond. Those guys can go into the corner as well as Nemesnikov. So the line, he's pretty special on that top line. I think at times Adam Ernie's been pretty good in his play. Sam Gagner for a veteran has been okay. But I really think, like the third and fourth lines now, they need to be more consistent on a regular basis.
Sure.
So a guy like Joe Veleno, right? I mean, he still has a growth learning curve to go through, but he's had some opportunity now at the pro level with the Detroit Red Wings, and I think his game has to be elevated a little bit. Now he's not going to get the minutes as if he was playing on the first or second line, but again, I just think that he has a lot of potential. And you might not see his progress this year, but maybe in the next couple of years, he'll be able to move up.
Curveball really quick, since you brought Veleno up. Do you make anything with him going down to Grand Rapids, or is this just more making sure he's still getting some minutes and getting more acclimated?
That's exactly what it is. It has nothing to do with his performance or anything like that. They want him to play. And if he was with this team like 4 years, 5 years now, I think they give him the rest, but he needs to play. And he's on a fourth line. They want him to get down there and play, 18, 20 minutes a game in Grand Rapids. And then we'll see what happens when we get back going again next week against Philadelphia. But I don't expect him to stay there. I just think it's a move just to get him to play and continue to try and grow.
Makes sense. We're going to take a real quick break and say, do not forget to come to the Hockey Writers for all of your 2022 Beijing Winter Olympic ice hockey coverage. Like I said, we've got both the men's and women's tournaments covered. And let's be honest, You don't want to be up at 2 a.m. If you do, we commend you. We'll be right there watching with you, and you can read all about it then first thing in the morning. So make sure you check out the Hockey Writers for all of your Olympic content. All right, Kyle, I think you're up.
Yeah, so you've already discussed kind of at length about the Red Wings' rise and then fall, and now their ascent again, and what you've seen over the course of your career. I just kind of want to get your perspective on what's your take when you look at other teams that have kind of gone through similar motions, and or teams that seem to be stuck in that rebuild system for multiple years, like a Buffalo Sabres or, you know, those types of teams. So what are you taking from where the Red Wings are with their new ascent, and how just the ebbs and flows happen across the league in general?
Well, I think there's a right way and a wrong way to build your team. And when you're going through a rebuild or a retool, whatever you want to call it. And I think Steve Yzerman's doing it the right way to achieve long-term success. There have been other teams. Look at the Montreal Canadiens again, right? They go to the Stanley Cup final, and then now they're in last place. That's not what you want to do when you're rebuilding. You want to make sure that you continue to progress, move up the ladder, so that you're going to be vying for a Stanley Cup each and every year. Like we saw that from the Red Wings when they made the playoffs 25 years in a row. They were a strong team for years, and every year they had the possibility, if things went their way and they played well, to win a Stanley Cup. So I think Steve's doing it the right way, and that means you have to manage your salary cap. You don't want to pay players, and you want to make sure that the veterans you bring in, you're not dishing out or doling out a whole bunch of money to where you're handcuffed them by their contracts. And I think when Steve Yzerman came in here, there were 4 or 5 contracts that just handcuffed them, and you had to wait until those contracts expired. And now the Red Wings are in that situation where their cap number is low. They're drafting well. And now, they can, in the offseason, they can go out and they've got cards to pull if they want to bring in a player, they have the money to pay them, but I don't think they're going to sign a guy to a 5 or 10 year deal, but I think, but you're not handcuffed. In other words, if you see a player that you really like, but you'll go over the cap, you can't make the deal, right? Where the Red Wings are in a perfect situation right now. Like I said, the money on the cap is low. They've got guys developing in the pipeline right now, and things are looking good. So I think they're doing it the right way. There are other teams, as I mentioned, like you mentioned, the Buffalo Sabres, right? I don't know what they're doing, to be honest. I mean, think about it. They've had lots of great players, and then they keep trading those players, and it's almost like there's no plan. The Yzerman plan, or the Yzer plan, as people like to call it, you can see how he's doing it. He did it with Tampa Bay. He's doing it here, and this is the right way to build a championship team from the ground level up that's going to be competitive for years to come, in my opinion.
And Ken, I'm obviously out here in Arizona. Bill Armstrong hasn't been shy about what he's doing out here either, and blowing it all up. So to your point, I think there's a level of clarity there with the Wings. So that's pretty cool. Sorry, Devin, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Ken, I just got to say real quick that hearing you call it the Yzer plan brings a smile to my face. Now, expanding outwards, not talking specifically about Red Wings, I want to talk about you for a little bit here. Who has been the most influential person in your career?
Well, I guess there's a couple of them, and one of them is Bruce Martin, because he was the guy that really I learned radio from, and not face to face, but just by listening to him on the radio. Bud Lynch too, I guess, when I was growing up. It's not like it is today, where if you want to be a radio broadcaster, play-by-play guy, you can listen to anybody anywhere. It doesn't matter what league they're in, AHL, IHL, whatever it is, the colleges, the pros. You can listen to everybody and see how they call a game. I had a little small transistor radio that if I was lucky on a good night, I could pick up, Chicago, or I could pick up St. Louis and listen to Dan Kelly, or even New York, where I could listen to their announcers as well. So, and then obviously being close to the border here in Detroit, you can watch Hockey Night in Canada. But to me, Bruce Martin, I listened to all his games. I thought he was a really good announcer. And I think he gets overlooked sometimes. I think he's right up there in that same class as, Bill and Foster Hewitt and Dan Kelly and Danny Gallivan. He just, remain local. He just never wanted to go national or anything like that. But I believe he had the ability to do it. He called the game like nobody else. And so listening to him, that's how I really kind of learned indirectly. The other person I'd have to say is Paul Woods. Like, he taught me so much about the game. He's a walking encyclopedia about the league. Like when I study for a broadcast, it's like I'm cramming for a midterm. You know what I mean? Yep. like I walk out of the room and I don't know who anybody is, but I studied to know them for the game. But you ask Paul, and Paul will tell you who's on the third line of Arizona, or who's on the third line of the Kings, or who's what the power play is, and I can't tell you that stuff. I always tell people, if you don't have a name or number on your back, I don't know who you are. But but I guess those are the two people. Obviously, your parents help you out as well. Giving you a lot of guidance when you grow up. My dad was pretty influential for that. But I think from a business standpoint, I would have to say Bruce Martin was really the guy that taught me how to call radio. Just by listening to him.
Well, we are very, very thankful for that, because I mean, I have had many, many nights listening to you growing up and into my career as well. So thank you for continuing on now in year 27 with the Red Wings.
Yeah, we put you to sleep, right, on those West Coast games.
Hey, I loved it. So what has been the most memorable event that you have covered in your career? And again, this doesn't have to be just the Red Wings, but do you have a moment that stands out more than others?
Well, obviously the Red Wings, that's the Stanley Cups are just amazing. And, you really don't get to enjoy it until after you look back after it. Like right now, I look back at 97, the first one, in 98, 2002, 2008. And, now you come back and you think about it, but when you're doing it, it's just another game. Like, but it's of greater importance, so you don't really have, it's like if you ask the coach, do you have time to think about enjoying the season? Well, no, because it's on to the next game, and that's the next game that you have to worry about. But it's the same thing for us, I guess. I mean, I don't really just get a chance until after the season to sit back and say like, wow, yeah, I remember that game, or I remember that play, or wow, that was fun, or, whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's, like, I guess one year during the lockout too, I would have to say that Wayne State University had a hockey team for 4 or 5 years, whatever it was. And I was asked to broadcast their playoff game for them. And I thought, for me to be able to call my alma mater, was a thrill. And we flew out to, I want to say it was Milwaukee or something like that. And they lost to Air Force or whoever it was in the first round, but it was just so nice to be able to call your own school. I mean, like I love calling University of Michigan games because I've always liked the program, and I had the chance for 11 years to work for Red Berenson and call some great players, great games. But to do it for your alma mater was really good. So I really enjoyed that.
Do you have an event that you would like to cover before your career is up?
No, not really. I mean, I'd like to do another Stanley Cup,
I was just gonna say.
I have 4 rings, and I'd like to have one for the thumb. You know what I mean? I'm still holding out to try and do
on next year's T-shirts for the locker room T-shirts. One for Ken's thumb.
One for the thumb. That's right. No, really. I mean, where am I going to go? I mean, this is my career. I'm with the Red Wings, and obviously, I want to see this team grow and be a contender for a long, long time, like it was before. And again, I would like to call another Stanley Cup championship. It's been too long. I mean, 2008, just too long ago. So
yes,
we need to get another Stanley Cup ring right here in Detroit.
And he's trying to have his hands look like Tom Brady.
Exactly.
At least one hand, not two.
Yeah.
I would like to, but I don't know if I'll be able to last.
It's funny you brought up the transistor radio and picking up broadcasts from all over, because Ken, I could tell you when I was a kid growing up in Chicago, obviously originally from Detroit downriver, but we would catch your calls if it was a cloudy night. Generally, it had to be kind of a cloudy night. We would be able to catch your calls back on WJR. And it was always a treat to be able to, when we could pick it up. It was always a treat. So I knew exactly what you were talking about when you were talking about picking them up from wherever, New York, Chicago, Canada. So that's pretty cool. All right. We got 2 questions, and the first one's a softball. So
All right.
got to know your opinion. American or Lafayette?
Wow. I've had
I think it's a softball.
I've had Conies at both places, but my heart is with Lafayette.
All right.
And, I think both places are great, but again, it's like Michigan and Michigan State, right? Two great schools, but if I had to pick one, I would go Lafayette just because I just think their hot dogs are better.
Had to ask. I had to ask. And our last question before you're off the hot seat, and I'm going to tell you just personally, my favorite call of yours ever that I could actually recite word for word. I'll spare you, but I could. Is when Steve Yzerman scored in '96 against the St. Louis Blues in Game 7 and sent the Wings to the Western Conference Final. Even though that ended up the way it did with Colorado, things almost had to play out that way for the organization to experience the sustained success. But that call of yours in '96 always will stick out. I became almost a permanent hockey fan and a diehard Red Wings fan because of that. So that's mine. I've got to ask you now to reflect a little bit different from what Kyle asked, but do you have a call that you have made that sticks out in your mind, whether it's a one-liner or an entire game, anything that sticks out in your mind, any call that you have made in the past?
Good question. Tough answer. But, just going back to that Yzerman goal that you liked, I remember after that game, for some reason, WJR asked me to come back to the station. And so I went up to the Fisher building up on the whatever floor it was, 40 something or 95th floor, whatever it was. And they were actually doing like a post-game show from up there. And they wanted me to come in because at the time, that was probably the biggest goal that was scored in a long, long time, And I just remember being on the air there for a long time, and they kept playing the cut over and over. And I'm saying, like, hey guys, I've heard it enough, It was so exciting. I mean, it was a really good game too. I remember both teams had really good chances to score. I think the goaltenders were terrific, and there was so much riding on the line. So when Yzerman scored that goal, it was just unbelievable. And it happened, I think Gretzky was on the ice, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was. He absolutely was. He, as Gary Thorne, I can do his call on that too. And Gretzky had it, lost it.
His call was better, by the
way. You know what, Ken, I'm going to say it was kind of like Michigan and Michigan State. I like them both.
They're both iconic calls.
You're riding the fence.
Absolutely.
You know what? I guess, all right, just to answer your question, like the first Stanley Cup, when we went down to, 6 seconds left, and Lindros just scored.
Yeah.
And you kind of knew, the game, I mean, we're going to win the Stanley Cup here. And there was a face-off, I think, at center ice, and you just knew right then, like I knew right then and there, I go, like, we're winning the Stanley Cup, like we're not going to lose this game, like it's finally ours after all these years. And before I did this with the Red Wings, I was like you guys. I was a big Red Wing fan, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 20 years ago, I was like you guys, saying like, man, I can't wait for the Red Wings to win a Stanley Cup. Little did I know that I would be the next one calling it, So to me, I think that final 6 seconds was probably the call that I remember the most. I think what comes close to that was in 2008 when I lost my voice.
Yeah.
And, Ken Daniels, it would have been okay if he would have done it, but I was so worried because the final seconds of of when you win the Stanley Cup is what people remember, and those are the calls that get played for eternity. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I did not have a voice, and I'm thinking, like, I don't want this to be blown. I'd rather have Daniels do it with a strong voice, and then when he threw it to me, it was like, that's all I had in me. And what a final play. I mean, Pittsburgh almost tied that game, Osgood made a great save, and then the puck went through the goal mouth, and then the players, the Red Wings, like, the game was over and they were just standing still. And then they finally realized, hey, I think we won the cup,
Yeah.
I think Ozzy was the first one to raise. You see him look up. He was the first one to raise his hands. Nobody wanted to quit yet. Yeah.
But that was unbelievable too. So I guess those two calls are there've been so many, and I guess I've been fortunate not only with the Red Wings, but so many great historic calls. Like Mike Gartner's 700th goal. Like I called that one when we were in Arizona, and Brett Hall, he scored his, what do you have? 700, 600. I can't remember, 700th maybe. It was against San Jose, and, Yzerman's 500th goal. I called that one. I called his 600th. What's funny about Steve Yzerman though, is I saw his first ever goal in a Red Wing uniform up in Port Huron. They played an exhibition game.
Oh, nice.
He scored in that game, right? So I saw that one. I saw him shoot it, and I saw it go in. His last goal that he scored was against the Flames, I believe.
Yep,
we were in Calgary, and we were late coming back from a break, and I was looking down, and then I looked up, and I knew he scored, but I didn't see the puck go in.
Oh.
So technically, I did not see his last ever goal.
We won't tell.
Don't tell him that.
Yeah.
Hopefully he's not listening to this episode right now.
No, he might be.
Well,
one of my favorite calls was in 2002 when the Red Wings beat up on the Colorado Avalanche 7-0, and to close out I think it was the Eastern or the Western Conference final.
Yep.
And
game 7.
Game 7. I was umpiring at the time. I was in high school. I was umpiring some kids baseball, and like all the parents had it on the radio. So we were listening to Ken Kal while I'm umpiring kids baseballs. My strike zone was so big because I was trying to get out of there, man. Like I was trying to get out of there so I could watch the end of the game. But listening to your calls and just kind of you had like this laugh in your voice every time you're announcing a goal. Like, oh, there's another one. Like it was so great. And I just
couldn't happen to a better team.
Yes, that was always one that stuck with me, and so I just wanted to thank you for making that moment stick with me throughout my life. So,
what's amazing too, though, is like all you guys have memories of, all these important events in Red Wing hockey. When you're calling the games, you don't really think about that. You're calling, but like me when I was growing up, and I remember listening to Bud and Bruce, and I can pick games that I remember listening to that. Like, wow, that was a great memory. And I remember where I was. And, so yeah, obviously you don't really think about it as an announcer, but obviously, people remember some of the calls that you make.
Absolutely. I mean, Ken, I think I can speak for every Red Wing fan out there when I say you've played such an integral part of our fandom. And you are so incredibly good at what you do. And You're such a good person on top of it that we feel really lucky as fans being able to hear you call the games. So thank you for everything that you do. And thank you for taking the time out to be on our humble show this week. We appreciate it. And thank you at home. I'm not going to get out of here without one more advertisement. If I haven't convinced you with my first 2 plugs, make sure you check out the Hockey Writers for all of our Olympic coverage. We will stay up late. We will get up early. Make sure you don't have to. Just check it out. And for everybody here, Ken, we can't thank you enough. Yes. That is our show. Thanks at home for watching, and we will see you next time. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.